Having made our return to the Liechtenstein Double Challenge in the previous episode, we have two more major returns in this episode as we focus on FC Vaduz and the 2032-33 season. First of all, we return to the top table as last season's Europa League semi-final run saw us earn enough coefficient points for a bonus Champions League place. And we already announced one big return transfer ahead of the Euros as Fabio Burmester came home. But we have potentially even bigger transfer news. As we noted, our other former star striker Lorenz Krauss was looking to leave AC Milan. I weighed up the pros and cons of putting in a transfer bid for all of 5 seconds, and here we are on transfer deadline day, ready to seal the deal.
Welcome home, son.
So Burmester and Krauss would be our only two signings, as we stuck with our core squad backed up by our youngsters. The Champions League fixtures gave us some incredibly tough opponents, but some beatable ones as well. So drop a couple of quick comments below. First of all, do you think the Krauss deal was a good one? And second, in the Champions League, do you think we can make top 8? Do you think we'll make playoffs? Or do you think we're going to miss out altogether? But before we return to Europe's Premier Club competition, let's check in on our early season form in the Swiss Super League, where we had started the season hot, winning every match we played in July, August and September, including midfield maestros Cristiano and Pascal Olner, grabbing a goal each as we won away to Basel. Olner was also on target against Young Boys with a fierce strike to give us a 1-0 win. And we rolled back the years against Luzern, as both Lorenz Krauss and Fabio Burmester got on the score sheet, both later combining passes to set up Jordan Keeling for a third. A dominant win, putting us 7 points clear after 7 games. Over to the Champions League now, where our campaign started with a home tie against Celtic. This was a comfortable win. Bradley Fink, Edu and Cristiano all grabbing a goal apiece. And in truth, we probably should have scored more. We would have a massive game coming up next though, as we travelled to the Theatre of Dreams to take on Manchester United. United relied on experience as Mohamed Kudus gave them the lead. Then Koopmeiners won a penalty, converted by a 35-year-old Marcus Rashford. We would pull one back as young wing-back Morris Schaefer set up Lorenz Krauss, but the outcome would end up being valiant defeat. We followed that up with an absolute belter of a game, as we hosted RB Leipzig in Vaduz. Both teams absolutely went for it in a high-octane first half. We had to come from behind twice, that midfield duo of Olner and Cristiano on the score sheet yet again. More of the same in the second half as Leipzig retook the lead. We would leave our third equaliser of the evening a little bit late, as Rajic salvaged a point right at the death. A much more tame 1-0 win over Anderlecht followed, before another big European night, this time away to Juventus. The hosts dominated the opening half, but we took a shock lead as Keeling set up Keigan off a quick counter-attack. And in the second half, Hercules would stun the world with a fine strike that secured us a 2-0 win in Turin. They don't come much bigger than that. 3 wins out of 5, enough to put us in contention for a top 8 spot with 3 games left to play. In the league, meanwhile, we just kept winning, adding 5 more victories to our streak, including a huge 4-1 win over rivals Basel. It was unlucky game number 13 the following week though, as Sion became the first team to take points off us. We got right back to winning ways after that, including big wins away to Young Boys and at home to Zurich. We dropped points for only the second time this season as Luzern held us to a draw just before the winter break, which we would enter 15 points clear at the top. Meanwhile, in the Champions League, this goal on 90 plus 5 meant we suffered a late home defeat to Atletico Madrid, dropping us out of the top 8 with away games against Monaco and Linfield left to play. In the Principality, it was Bradley Fink who led the show in the first half, netting twice as we established another shock lead. Dennis Keigan also got in on the action after a quick exchange of passes with Hans Brahmer. And Rajic put the cherry on top right at the end of the 90 for another momentous European win. Against Linfield, it was English winger Jordan Keeling who starred, scoring twice in the opening 15 minutes in a comfortable win. But was that enough to get back into the top 8 and go straight into the round of 16? Frustratingly not, as we were edged out by virtue of goals scored by Hertha Berlin. And we would have to face who else but old rivals Lyon in the playoff round. There were a couple of moves out in the winter transfer window. Uwe Wolf, Fabian Schreck and Nicholas Schulze joined our long list of youngsters out on loan. Timo Schleck was looking for first-team football, so we sold him to Schalke. We will still have him in the national side, of course. And Hans Brahma had been attracting interest from a few different European clubs, eventually opting for Inter Milan, who thankfully agreed to a loan-back deal. And it wasn't just our players that the big teams were starting to show interest in, as Manchester United invited me to a job interview, but of course, I turned them down, as I had a Champions League clash with Lyon to focus on. It did not begin well, as we went 2 goals down, but a lifeline was cast as Fink pulled one back to give us a fighting chance back at the Rhine Park. Indeed, Fink had us level on aggregate just 15 minutes in. Our joy did not last long as Lyon put themselves back in control. But Lyon's joy did not last long either, as Fink went for the spectacular to meet Burmester's cross. The tie then went into extra time, and it looked like we had blown it when we gave away a soft penalty and fell behind yet again. But there was to be a late twist as Hans Brahma scored with seconds left on the clock, meaning a penalty shootout. Lyon missed their first kick and their second. We did not. Lyon did manage to get their third in, as did Kraus, and that was all it took to seal the victory. Into the hat then for the round of 16. Jamie Vardy providing hosting duties for this one. A tough draw awaited though, as we were one of the unseeded teams. And we ended up with yet another trip to France to take on PSG. Although who could we have faced that would have been any easier? The first leg in Vaduz was a cagey affair until Thomas Muro got behind the PSG defence on 80 minutes. And that wasn't the only goal of the night, as Muro turned provider, picking out Yannick Goop, who stuck it into the back of the net. Another amazing result on this crazy European run. Things got even crazier in Paris as Kaigan gave us a shock lead, but PSG inevitably struck back, taking the lead on the night before half-time and needing just one more goal to level the tie. And it looked like they would get it as they were awarded a penalty. Mbappe stepped up and he missed it. PSG pushed for an equaliser but eventually overcommitted themselves, Pascal Olner getting another goal to secure a 4-2 aggregate win. But an even tougher challenge next as we prepare to take on Manchester City. Back to the Super League now, where we finished off the regular season unbeaten, topping the table by quite some distance, and heading into the Championship group as heavy favourites. And at this point, you have to be wondering, could we go invincible this season? The Championship group got off to a slow start as we drew 2 of our opening 3 games, and then potentially becoming victims of our own success as our Champions League progress caused a massive fixture pile-up. I mean, look at this madness to start April. 4 games in a week, all away from home, including a trip to the Etihad and matches against our 2 biggest domestic rivals. A rotated side kicked things off with a win at Luzern. Against City, we were chasing the game after just 3 minutes. But our counter-attacking style paid off once again as Keeling set up Kaigan for an equaliser. And then in the second half we were in dreamland as a defensive clanger led to an opening for Thomas Muro. But this is Man City, of course, and our shock lead did not last. Once they had started to apply the pressure, it was hard to resist. And they inevitably made a comeback, scoring twice more to secure the win. Still, the home leg was yet to come. But then up popped Erling Haaland. We had avoided him in the Nations League when Liechtenstein played Norway, but not here as he scored a brace at the Rhine Park. Bradley Fink, MVP of our European run, tried to get us back in it, but it was too little, too late. Our run to the quarterfinals would see us named competition overachievers at the end of the season, with Bradley Fink getting the highest average rating in the competition, but the Champions League dream was over. But what of that invincible season attempt? Well, in between those Manchester City games, a rotated side, albeit with Lorenz Kraus in the starting lineup, earned a 2-0 win over Basel. And just 48 hours later, 18-year-old Marvin Nagel scored on his debut. As we beat Young Boys, we needed this late strike from Thomas Muro to earn a 3-3 draw at home to Grasshoppers, but then beat Will and Basel, meaning that the invincible season was just 1 game away. Home to Luzern Hansbrahmer in possibly his last game for the club set us on our way. Luzern were objectively the better team and did equalise with 10 minutes to go, but it would be Lorenz Krauss who popped up in injury time with a second goal, giving us the win and completing the domestic season unbeaten. In the meantime, as you may have noticed, we made it through to the Liechtensteiner Cup final, thrashing Bolzers but perhaps giving Eschen Murren a little too much, and setting up a third final in a row with Vaduz 2. It took Lorenz Krauss all of 15 seconds to give us the lead, and by the 15-minute mark, he had completed his hat-trick. Tony Block and Dennis Keigan then both extended the scoreline to 5 by half-time. Daniel Ori pulled one back early in the second half for our second team, but a penalty from Keigan and another late Pascal Allner effort sealed a 7-1 win, and passage to next season's Europa League once again. And I think by this point we have to be pushing to win the Europa League next season, so find out how that goes in a future episode.